Let me save you time watching every glowing review of this game by summarizing all of them at once. As an indie game made by a couple of amateur developers, Clair Obscure Expedition 33 proves that modern AAA games are complete garbage. Anyone who dares to enjoy modern AAA games is a shill for greedy, evil corporations. This masterpiece is the only turn-based RPG made since Final Fantasy X came out in 2001. And although this is my first turn-based RPG, I just know it's the best in the genre. In fact, it's a shame that evil companies like Atlas, Gust, or Square Enix haven't made a significant turn-based RPG in over 20 years. And no turn-based game has ever had things like parry or shooting mechanics, making Clair Obscure's gameplay completely original. This is also the best-looking game ever, at least as good as any AAA game to date, and so much better optimized. Best of all, the story is completely original and unpredictable, literally the greatest tale ever told in all of fiction. That is how almost every glowing review of this game goes. The talking points are remarkably repetitive between reviews, almost as though some of the influencers were coached on what to say as a part of a marketing campaign. We need to notice something. Most of the praise this game gets is in context of it supposedly being an indie game. An indie game which proves that modern games are somehow greedy and terrible. Let's tackle that first. The people who bash modern AAA games play very few, if any, of them, so they wouldn't know if modern games were bad at all. Second, every definition of indie game that I could find is almost identical. So here's the one from Wikipedia. An indie game is, and I quote, a video game created by individuals or smaller development teams without the financial and technical support of a game publisher, unquote. There you have it. Expedition 33 is not even remotely like an indie game. It received massive financial and other support from a major publisher, Kepler Interactive, throughout its development. The team size was also far from the few people typically associated with indie game projects, with the development team consisting of over 30 staff, some of whom were industry veterans from Ubisoft. There was also extensive outsourcing. One source, which was recently scrubbed on Wikipedia, but which I have a screenshot of, states that around 50 developers were outsourced, and you can see that in the game's credits. An actual indie developer couldn't dream of outsourcing people. They wouldn't even have the connections or processes to do it. As for the game's budget, all I can say is that you should look at the game's credits and try to estimate the costs of employee pay and benefits, owner distributions, office space rental, utilities, office equipment like PCs and software, outsourcing of developers, musician pay, localization costs, which were extensive, voice actors, some of whom were very expensive, video production, accountants, lawyers, and so on. If, after making your estimate of this game's production costs, if you still believe that the costs of this game were truly less than $10 million, then I have a business opportunity to sell you. As a professional of accountancy, I have never seen such obvious nonsense as that $10 million figure. Even if you do believe the $10 million number, that's not a terribly small budget. Pokemon Legends EA is considered AAA, despite its development budget being $13 million. Wouldn't this make Expedition 33 a AA game at least? Why does all this matter? Because most of the adoration this game receives is because of the lie of it being indie. If this game had the Square Enix logo attached to it, it would have gotten a fraction of the sales and abysmal reviews. Social media mobs love to nitpick and hate every aspect of Square Enix games, and that would have happened if the indie lie weren't used. In fact, prominent accounts on Twitter were even declaring this very game as woke corporate slop and encouraging people to boycott it only to completely reverse course once the term indie was used. Most of this game's fans seriously think that by supporting it, they are fighting a great moral crusade against business, capitalism, and greed. This is what makes the fans hostile, not only towards people who point out the dishonest marketing or the game's obvious flaws, but they also feel downright venom towards other major releases in the year. If you think that Death Stranding 2 or Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is Game of the Year, you must be fighting on behalf of giant corporations, because you're an evil corporate shill. Can't you see that we need to send a message to the industry? This quixotic delusion of fighting against capitalism is mainly what makes the Expedition 33 mega fans so insufferable and toxic. But why don't you proponents ask yourselves, if you are genuinely fighting against and upending the games industry, then why aren't you receiving pushback from the industry? We've all seen how aggressive developers, and especially game journalists, are when they're threatened or challenged. So why are they amplifying your message about this game? Why do they shower the game in 10 out of 10 reviews, more awards than any other game in history, and repeat the claims of it being a David versus Goliath indie game? Even if the game deserves it, it doesn't make sense unless the game isn't an actual threat to the industry. What we'll see in the future are copycat marketing strategies. Simply greenlight and fund projects the industry wanted to create anyway and market them as indie. Even a publisher like Ubisoft can join in on the fun by creating smaller publishing arms of so-called indie games. This could even be done in collaboration with other partners. By offering technical help to the project, the parent company can split some of the costs of production and not count the publisher's portion as being part of the development costs. In this way, single-A and double-A projects can be created under the guise that they are indie. Many consumers will buy them up, believing that they are standing up against the bigger organizations, so revenue will be high. Games that actually are indie will receive less attention and won't be a threat anymore. Game journalists can give these games glowing reviews without the usual pushback from gamers, because gamers want to support indie games. And if someone points out flaws in a game, they'll be drowned in voices saying, "It's just an indie game, what do you expect? Are you some kind of AAA loving corpo?" Next, let's consider the charge that the game industry has given up on turn-based RPGs, a claim obsessively repeated by Expedition 33's most ardent defenders. This claim shows that these fans neither know nor care about this genre, since turn-based RPGs have been one of the most produced, publicized, and celebrated genres throughout the 21st century. We have the Persona franchise, many of the Yakuza games, the Paper Mario games, the Fire Emblem series, some modern Final Fantasy titles, many HD 2D games from Square Enix like Octopath Traveler or Triangle Strategy, Sea of Stars, almost the entire Atelier franchise, most of the mainline Pokemon games, and so on ad nauseum, not to mention the thousands of authentic indie games out there. My question to the fans of this game is, if you love turn-based games so much, why didn't you care about the genre for all of these years? You can see in a large share of the reviews that the players admit it's their first time with the genre, or the first since a game like Final Fantasy VII came out on the PlayStation 1. As for the so-called groundbreaking game mechanics, none are even remotely unique to the genre at all, and saying otherwise further shows that the Clair Obscurists are tourists showing up out of the blue. Imagine if a group of people started claiming that the gaming industry had abandoned FPS campaigns since Doom 2 launched. Now imagine if this same group claimed that a new and unoriginal FPS campaign was the greatest game ever made, and that the ability to use vehicles was completely unique. Their beloved FPS campaign might be great, but the fans' behavior is still asinine. Expedition 33 itself can be called a love letter to JRPGs, but its fans are the worst kind of hate mail. As for the visuals and optimization, this is an area where none of the game's devotees can ever provide technical specifics, so allow me. All of the footage in my video was captured at 4K max settings with upscaling set to quality, and the GPU was a 4090. I also played a good amount of this game on a Linux PC with a 7700X and an RX 7600. I experienced the same issues on both PCs. Let's begin with lighting. Most of the reflections are broken, and if you look at them from the wrong angles, they straight up disappear. Even besides the reflections, the lighting in many scenes looks terrible, and I'm not sure how they screwed that up so badly in Unreal Engine 5. Traversal stutters in-game are common and significant, with shader compilation stutters rearing their ugly head even on the 9800X3D I captured this footage on. There were plenty of instances of ghosting around characters. The upscaling methods they shipped the game with were badly outdated, especially XeSS, which was over 2 years old in its version. This upscaling blunder was not only an extremely basic form of optimization they completely screwed up, it also led to image quality issues such as pixelated assets in motion, particularly in darker environments like the Manor. The excessive use of pre-made Unreal Engine 5 assets lead it to looking like other UE5 games and feeling generic. Sometimes it feels like Unreal Engine 5 the game. There were also glitchy hair physics, poor lip syncing, and strangely moving plants which did not resemble paintings at all in their movement. Lastly, there were times when the screen became awash in red for several minutes at a time, regardless of the PC used, the settings, or even if the display was HDR compatible. With these and other downsides, this game doesn't even stand toe-to-toe with the best AA games in visual fidelity, but calling this a AAA game killer in its graphics is ridiculous. And the lacking graphics make the poor performance of the game baffling. How does Expedition 33 manage to perform worse than almost every literal path trace game I've played? What about the visuals justifies less than 60 FPS on a 4090 without the use of upscaling? Why does the game stutter so much on a 9800X3D, the top-of-the-line gaming processor? Here's another smoking gun for this game having garbage optimization on PC. In almost every other game, the ROG Ally outperforms the Steam Deck by significant margins. This is because the Ally is a much more powerful device. But in Expedition 33, it can't even remotely maintain 30 FPS under the most extremely low settings. Meanwhile, the Steam Deck gets 60 FPS just fine. When far weaker hardware gets over double the performance in a piece of software, that's a dead giveaway of a severe optimization problem. Lastly, there's the story. Overall, it's very similar to stories like The Matrix or Inception, with the same themes of grief, loss, escapism into fiction, and not being able to tell reality from experiences with fiction. Early on, a character named Alicia comes to Mael and directly states 3 times that the world and the people in it aren't real, that they know not that they are not, that the world is a playground and a fragile dream, to use her exact words. This spoils the whole premise. Think about it for a few seconds, recalling how there's a paintress and the characters bleed ink instead of blood, and it's immediately obvious what the world is, especially with how common multiverse plots and the like are these days. The fact that Mael is regarded as incredibly special largely gives her away as well. The story is mostly written this way, with almost every so-called twist being blatantly revealed hours in advance. To demonstrate how the game spoils itself, let's talk about the first supposed surprise of the game. In adventure stories, there is typically a mentor/powerful wizard character who dies so the heroes can struggle, learn, grow, and ultimately overcome the evil they are fighting. This death can technically occur anytime in the story, but most commonly it happens about a third of the way through. This pattern of adventure stories occurs not only in the most popular fiction like The Lord of the Rings or the original Star Wars trilogy, but also in the most video game RPGs from Suikoden 1 to Final Fantasy 16. The fact that I have to explain to grown adults such an obvious pattern which you should have also been taught in elementary school is a shocking indictment of the state of global education. Anyway, the fact that this overused story trope is so shocking to the game's fans is made even more embarrassing by all the blaring warning signs the game leaves about Gustav's impending doom. The game has tons of characters die all around at the beginning, and presents the expedition as a suicide mission where anyone or everyone could die. Gustav is as obvious a mentor/wizard character as Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's also made too nice and likable, which is common in poorly written characters who are destined to die. The game even shows a cutscene showing a dream of Gustav dying, and Mael being heartbroken over it, then has the powerful and murderous character Renoir show up and threaten Mael, after which Mael talks to Gustav about her fears of him dying. I have to ask you fans, what could the writers have done to make it more obvious that Gustav was going to die? It's a serious question, because I can't think of a single thing. It's like the game is saying, what if Gustav dies? It would sure be a shame if he died. Mael would sure be heartbroken if he died, and she's worried about Renoir killing him. It would make the expedition so much harder if he dies. This story is about as subtle as a sledgehammer to the face. So much for the game's plot being unpredictable, as every fan of this game assures us. If you didn't even suspect this death was coming, it tells us a lot about you and nothing about the quality of the story. Personally, I stopped playing as Gustav as soon as I could because I knew the Aerith moment was coming actually less than an hour in. What a pointless and shallow trope of a character Gustav is. But there are more basic problems with the story than the lack of originality or the sophomoric insinuations. In any adventure story, you'll have character growth, especially in the middle act, and at least one moment of what is called an anagnorisis. An anagnorisis, and I still can't believe I'm explaining this to you because this is something you should have learned in middle school, but an anagnorisis is where a character recognizes or learns something that changes the course of the story. Example of this would be the murder of Gonzago mini-play in Hamlet, which leads to the real murder of Polonius. Luke learning that Darth Vader is his father and has good in him, which leads to victory in the end. Or in Final Fantasy VII, when Cloud enters the life stream and discovers who he really is, therefore breaking free from being Sephiroth's puppet. Expedition 33 lacks character growth and learning, even when things are revealed to its characters. The characters change very little in the story. The one who changes the most would be Mael, and she regresses in the story, becoming more selfish and clinging to her fantasies of how she wishes life had been. This makes events like her learning about her true life lack impact. This is bad writing of the kind that even your average high school novelist wouldn't do. The themes of the story themselves are shallow. This isn't a microcosm of life or an epic that exposes the intricacies of human nature in grand historical context. It isn't even a classic hero's journey. Expedition 33 is a work of fiction about works of fiction. It's not original, and it's not deep. If you think it is, I have a great reading list of literature to share. One final thing about this story. As many have pointed out, the main world of Expedition 33 is just a painting with nothing being real. The fact that this is the case and is revealed so early on makes almost all of the characters and story events lack any kind of emotional impact or payoff. It's hard to care about the journey when it's obviously nothing more than a lead-up. There's something else deeply off about this game. This is the most hyped release of the year, and you can't even state inconvenient facts about it without at least 10 people lashing out at you. At the same time, this isn't even in the top 10 best-selling games this year. I have an answer for why the online presence doesn't match the sales figures. I played this game because tons of mega fans on Twitter were pestering me to play it. But here's the thing. The vast majority of them had never even played Expedition 33. So many of them simply saw a video about it online, repeating the same false marketing talking points I've covered here. And they decided to join in on this holy quest to evangelize the game. So when the trolls show up, just remember that most of them simply watch someone play it on Twitch, which they don't think matters because to them, Expedition 33 isn't a game, it's a religion. It isn't a source of entertainment, it's a righteous cause which demands activism. And that's the problem. This isn't a trivial matter of disagreeing over whether a game is fun or not. This is about a half-baked agenda being aggressively and dishonestly shoved down our throats. So to the Expedition 33 fans, I say, enjoy the game, it is genuinely good, and I myself enjoyed playing it. And also explore the JRPG genre, but leave the activism to the adults in the room. I'm Sushi, keep rolling.
He circumnavigated with one ship the entire planet. He was killed by wild natives before they got back to Portugal. And when they got back, there was only like 11 people alive of the 200 and something crew, and the entire ship was rotting down to the waterline. That's destiny. That's will. That's striving. That's being a trailblazer, an explorer, going into space, mathematics, quantum mechanics, the secrets of the universe. It's all there. Life is fiery with its beauty, its incredible detail. Tuning into it. Unlock your human potential, your doorways to perception. I want to see you truly live.